Well, hello everybody, welcome back to Shark Talk. So here I've got my Jaws Blu-ray set. It contains the Blu-ray disc as well as the DVD. It's a box set, and it's got this booklet in the center here, which I'm really excited to present with you for this episode of Shark Talk. It doesn't have a particular name, but it's just a booklet containing some really interesting information on the backstory of Jaws. So it starts off with a quote from Steven Spielberg. So, what I really owed to Jaws was creating in me a great deal of humility about tempering my imagination with the facts of life at sea. Jaws was the film that changed movies forever. It established the concept of the summer blockbuster and transformed a former television director, Steven Spielberg, into one of the world's most famous filmmakers. The highest-grossing movie in history at the time of release, Jaws was the first high-concept film, a motion picture whose story could easily be explained in a few words or a single image. Often imitated, Jaws set the standard for every blockbuster that followed. It remains one of the greatest movies of all time. Introduction by producer Richard D. Zanuck. It was spring. It was the spring of 1973 when David Brown and I read the author's rough manuscript of Jaws, which contained notes from both Peter Benchley and his Doubleday editors. David was in New York, I in Los Angeles. As was our custom with a new, hot manuscript, we would both read it overnight and speak in the morning. "I like it," said David. "So do I," was my reply. "How are we going to do it?" "The water and a huge shark," David asked. "I have no idea, but let's buy it quickly and figure it out later," I said. "It's risky," said David. "We've never made a purchase like this without some idea of how we could pull it off. The studio expects this from us, Dick. We're the filmmakers, and we're supposed to know what we're doing." "I know. Buy it out of our discretionary fund, and we'll deal with the studio later," I said. "Let's grab this now." And so the Jaws journey began. Peter Benchley would write the first draft script, and David and I would pretend that we knew how to make the film until we got a director on board to show us the way. Months later, I was ushered into Lou Wasserman's office in the Black Tower. I had always been amazed at the starkness of the office and how his desk was always clear of everything other than a pad and pencil enclosed by a leather-bound folder. But how could he handle all the multitude of MCA's worldwide business without even a scrap of paper in sight? But he did. And he was the best company head I had ever met. He had faith in filmmakers and knew what he didn't know. Neither one of us were big on small talk, so I got right into it. "We've got a director for Jaws that I want to talk to you about. The kid, Spielberg." A long pause. "We love him," he replied, "and I know how you and he hit it off on the Sugarland Express. But I think you should have a more seasoned director like John Sturges or Richard Fleischer. I've read the script, and it could get out of hand. On the water with the shark and everything. Dick, you need a much more experienced director, someone who has done this type of movie before." With all due respect, Lou, that's exactly what we don't want. We want to see this film through the fresh eyes of someone who hasn't done this before. Otherwise, it will be just another adventure movie. He gave me a long, hard look. "I've given you my warning, Dick. Just don't call me from the location telling me I was right." This was his way of telling me to go ahead. Stephen was waiting for me in the Universal Commissioner. "We're on," I said. Lou said, "We're on." "Wow," exclaimed Stephen. "By the way," I said, "do you have any idea of how we can do this? Because I don't." He didn't answer me, but we both broke down in laughter. Movie history was set in motion, and everybody's lives, including Lou's, were to change forever. And on June 20th, 1975, everyone around the world stopped going into the water. So this is very true. This is very interesting. Not really behind the scenes. This is almost pre-true script. This is just draft script era. So it's very interesting to learn about, actually. So here we got It All Started with a Shark, a novel by Peter Benchley. An ardent advocate for marine conservation and the protection of sharks, Peter Benchley served on the National Council of Environmental Defense, worked with Wild Aid, hosted numerous television wildlife programs, gave speeches around the world, and wrote articles for National Geographic and other publications. So even though this movie took part in making people afraid of sharks, and people were angry, some environmentalists nowadays are angry at the writers and filmmakers, as it said, they're level-headed people can enjoy imagination and enjoy fiction, but also be, as I said, level-headed enough to be educated and actually know the difference between fiction and non-fiction, as it's exclaimed that Peter Benchley was a marine conservationist, and he worked with Wild Aid and hosted numerous television wildlife programs, so he knew about animals. He wasn't just out to make everything seem horrible. But anyway, so it starts off by 1971, freelance writer Peter Benchley had published numerous articles and a travel memoir, Time and a Ticket, 1964, but had never written a novel. While having lunch with Thomas Congdon, a newly hired editor at Doubleday, Benchley was asked if he had any ideas for one, inspired by a 1964 newspaper article he had read about Frank Mundus, a sport fisherman who caught a 4,500-pound shark off Montauk, New York. The writer replied he did, about a great white shark that appears off a Long Island resort and afflicts it. With Doubleday agreeing to publish the book, Benchley received $1,000 advance, rented a room above a garage in New Jersey, and went to work. Although he first named the book Silence in the Water, and author also considered Great White, A Stillness in the Water, The Summer of the Shark, and The Terror of the Monster, before Congdon suggested The Jaws of Leviathan. When Benchley pointed out a leviathan was a mammal and not a fish, the two settled on Jaws. Completing the manuscript in January 1973, Benchley soon found Jaws the talk of the industry, with the paperback rights going for $575,000. Additional advances came from Reader's Digest and the Book of the Month. Club producer David Brown, having heard of the book while visiting the offices of Cosmopolitan, a magazine edited by his wife, Helen Gurley Brown, acquired the screen rights with partner Richard D. Zanuck for $150,000. Published on February 1st, 1974, Jaws became a sensation, staying on the bestseller list for 44 weeks. The book sold over 200,000 copies, and hardcover paperback sales were even more astounding, moving to 2,005,000 copies in its first 3 weeks alone. Propelled by the success of the screen adaptation, Jaws would sell over 9 million soft covers by the end of 1975. At the time of Peter Benchley's passing in 2006, Jaws had sold over 20 million copies, making it one of the great success stories in publishing history. So that's interesting. Imagine if the movie was called The Jaws of Leviathan, or even The Stillness in the Water. I mean, it would still be a great movie, but Jaws is such an iconic name. That's hilarious how such a simple thing came up with a name that actually sticks to this day. Okay, and here we got a photograph of the Orca with all the three actors on it. You got Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, and Richard Dreyfuss, and it just has a little list of the cast and crew. Steven Spielberg, director; Roy Scheider, Chief Martin Brody; Richard Dreyfuss, Matt Hooper; Robert Shaw, Sam Quinn; Lorraine Gary, Ellen Brody; Murray Hamilton, Larry Vaughn; Peter Benchley, Carl Gottlieb. Screenplay: David Brown, Richard D. Zanuck, producers; John Williams, composer. Director: Steven Spielberg. Born in Cincinnati, Ohio, Steven Spielberg began his career as a filmmaker with Amblin, 1968, a 26-minute short he made while a student at California State University, Long Beach, the story of a couple who drift apart while hitchhiking to the Pacific Ocean. Amblin soon found its way to Sid Sheinberg, a Universal Television executive, who signed the 21-year-old director to a 7-year contract, making Spielberg the youngest filmmaker in history to receive a long-term studio deal. Beginning in television, Spielberg directed episodes of Night Gallery, Marcus Welby, MD, The Name of the Game, The Psychiatrist Columbo, and Owen Marshall, Counselor at Law, before receiving his first TV movie assignment, Duel, in 1971, expanded to 90 minutes for the overseas market. Duel's success led to Spielberg's first theatrical feature, The Sugarland Express, 1974. Although well received by critics, the movie was not a commercial hit. With his next project, Spielberg not only changed his life, but an entire industry as well. The first summer blockbuster, Jaws, 1975, broke box office records and created the marketing model for every major studio release that followed. With the back-to-back success of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 1977, Spielberg's name became a household word. I'm having a hard time with this page. Okay, following the World War II comedy 1941-1979, Spielberg directed Raiders of the Lost Ark 1981, E.T. the Extraterrestrial 1982, and executive produced Back to the Future 1985. Going against type, he made 3 dramas, The Color Purple 1985, Empire of the Sun 1987, and Always 1989. Before returning to genre movies with Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade 1989, Hook 1991, and Jurassic Park 1993, he the latter breaking E.T.'s record as the world's highest grossing film at the time, winning the Best Picture and Best Director Academy Awards for Schindler's List 1993. Spielberg soon formed his own studio, DreamWorks, with Jeffrey Katzenberg and David Geffen. In 1994, returning to the screen in 1997 with The Lost World, Jurassic Park, and Amistad, he received his second Best Director Academy Award for the World War II epic Saving Private Ryan, 1998. With the new millennium, Steven Spielberg maintained his prolific pace, directing AI Artificial Intelligence 2001, Catch Me If You Can 2002, War of the Worlds 2005, Munich 2005, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull 2008, and The Adventures of Tintin 2011, and Warhorse 2011. The director and executive producer of countless box office hits, Spielberg remains the most commercially successful filmmaker in history. That's very cool. That's very interesting. What a resume. What a career. What a life, actually. At the bottom here, we just got a little bit of movie trivia. Concerned over being typecast as an exploitation director, Steven Spielberg briefly considered making the musical Lucky Lady before fully committing to Jaws. That would have been a bad move. Roy Scheider as Amity Police Chief Martin Brody. Born in Orange, New Jersey, Roy Scheider studied drama at Rutgers University and Franklin and Marshall College before serving in the U.S. Air Force for 3 years, making his professional debut in New York Shakespeare Festival production of Richard III. Schneider alternated between soap operas and stage work, winning a 1968 Obie Award for Stephen D., making his screen debut in 1964's The Curse of the Living Corpse. Scheider appeared in a handful of films before Clute 1971, and his Academy Award nominated performance in The French Connection 1971 made him a star. Scheider's success quickly led to the opening roles in The 7-Ups 1973, Jaws 1975, Marathon Man 1976, Sorcerer 1977, Jaws 2 1978, and All That Jazz 1979. The latter earning him an Academy Award nomination as Best Actor. Other notable projects followed, including Blue Thunder 1983, 2010, 1984. I guess it's a theater or a television series. The Russia House 1990, Naked Lunch 1991. Romeo is Bleeding, 1993. TV's Sequest, ESV, 1993, 1995. Always wanted to see that, actually. I never actually ended up seeing it. And The Rainmaker, 1997. One of the most distinguished actors in Hollywood. Roy Scheider passed away at age 75 in 2008. Okay, so that is all I will read for today. I will continue on this book in the next Shark Talk, as it is actually quite a long book. The next time we continue off, we'll be heading into Richard Dreyfuss. But just to end it off, we got one last bit of movie trivia to share with you here. The film's most famous line, "You're gonna need a bigger boat," was improvised by Roy Scheider. I think a lot of people know that. I knew that. It's on a lot of YouTube videos and people that talk about movies. That's quite a well-known, interesting filmmaking story, and a spur-of-the-moment thing became, again, one of the most famous lines in movie history, so that's very cool. So thank you very much for watching this edition of Shark Talk, everybody, and I will continue on next time with this booklet, starting off with Richard Dreyfuss. Thank you very much.